Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Sedan channel. Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse made multiple headlines today, both in crypto media as well as mainstream media. And he says that settlement with the SEC ain't going to happen, folks. And there are two instances that I saw where he was interviewed, where he was speaking on this subject. And the second one, which is the one that I don't think is circulating quite as widely, he was on stage. And he basically said, I'll just paraphrase, but this is pretty close to what he said. He goes, he was saying, if you look at a Venn diagram, basically what in terms of what you need for settlement, what the SEC would require and what Ripple would require, he said there's basically nothing in between. He said that there's about a 0% chance or a 0% overlap if you're looking at a Venn diagram, a 0% chance. It ain't happening, folks. And there's also a separate video clip where he was on CNBC, national television, and I think some people misread what Brad Garlinghouse was saying, because he was stating in the clip that was shared by many that, no, it doesn't look like there's going to be a settlement, and then people somehow misread those words as, it looks like there's going to be settlement, which is the exact opposite of what he said. So I don't know, man. So I'll share with you the latest comments. This is all brand new stuff from Brad Garlinghouse today, but before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, so here's the first headline from the Crypto Basic. World Economic Forum 23, Ripple CEO optimistic of a favorable ruling against SEC, settlement not likely. Yeah, so settlement not likely is putting it lightly, especially if you reference the second comment that I was talking about at the outset of the video. He said it's about a 0%. It ain't happening, folks. Brad Garlinghouse does not believe for a moment that there's going to be settlement here. Very clear. It's most strongly he's worded that sentiment to date. Anyway, piece reads as follows. Garlinghouse doesn't expect a settlement with SEC. Brad Garlinghouse, CEO at Ripple, has noted that he expects a final resolution of the legal battle with the U.S. SEC in the first half of this year, revealing that he feels confident about the outcome due to Ripple's position with the law. Garlinghouse further noted that a settlement is unlikely, as it would only be initiated if the SEC admits XRP is not a security. Yeah, so I'll just pause and note, he's been echoing that sentiment for like literally close to 2 years at this point. And it's right. He said, if, and by the way, I've got comments from two attorneys within the XRP community, Attorney John Deaton and Attorney Fred Rispoli. But he's been saying, Garlinghouse has been saying for 2 years, if you want to wrap this thing up, we just need to have, on a go-forward basis, clarity, legal clarity for XRP. And if it were the case that the SEC believed that the asset itself is never the security, as case precedent should lead them to believe, then why is it so hard for the SEC to cede this one freaking point? Take money from Ripple, they'll pay the fines, whatever, and then just say, yeah, on a go-forward basis, you're all clear, XRP. What are they giving up if they just again, acknowledge case precedent? The underlying asset, never the security. Oranges are not securities. When you go to the grocery mart, this is in reference to the W.J. Howie Co., the Supreme Court case back in 1946, when you now today go to the supermarket and buy a damn orange, you are not in a common enterprise with anyone, with the grocer or me or anybody else that's ever had a damn orange. It's an orange. Okay, it is not a security. You are not purchasing a security at the grocery store. Anyway, piece continues. The Ripple CEO made these comments while speaking to CNBC today at the World Economic Forum 2023 held in Davos, Switzerland. Quote, the case is now fully briefed in front of the judge. We are optimistic that this will certainly be resolved in 2023, maybe the first half. We'll see how it plays out from here, but I feel very good about where we are relative to the law and the facts, Garlinghouse remarked. He also mentioned that though Ripple would love to settle, such a settlement will only materialize if the SEC acknowledges that XRP is not a security. However, since the SEC has maintained its motion that most crypto assets, including XRP, are securities, Garlinghouse noted that this means a settlement may not take place. And he said, quote, we have always said that we would love to settle, but it requires one very important thing, and that is that on a go-forward basis, it's clear that XRP is not a security. I'm very optimistic, and I think, absent some significant change in posture from the SEC, I can't imagine that we won't have a resolution from the judge. I have heard, so let's pause and note, I think this might be actually where the confusion came in, because He was asked on CNBC about settlement, and then he goes to state, I can't imagine that we won't have a resolution. And so people, I can't imagine we won't have a resolution. So they're thinking in terms of settlement, but you got to listen to the next 3 words. From the judge. Again, can't imagine that we won't have a resolution from the judge. I think that's where some people within the XRP community were kind of missing the full message that was being delivered by Brad Garlinghouse. Anyway, the quote continues. I have heard in Davos repeatedly how important it is, the SEC Ripple lawsuit, for the whole crypto industry in the United States. He added, that's a quote, and then the piece continues, he added when asked further if Ripple plans to wait on the judge's decision. He also pointed out the significance of the lawsuit to the broader crypto scene in the United States, which remains the general consensus. And then there was also this. This is interesting. So new comments regarding the Bill Hinman emails, again, spoken today. Unfortunately, he can only say so much because from a legal perspective, like he literally can't reveal this information currently. But he did say some things in such a strong way that it became clear that, and I do not believe for a moment Brad Garlinghouse would mislead anyone on this particular topic. That would just be absurd. But it increasingly becomes clear that there's truly disastrous, very damning stuff in the Bill Hinman Ethereum Free Pass, drafts of the speech and emails associated with that. So here's a headline also from today. Ripple CEO says people will be stunned at the SEC's behavior when Hinman's emails come to light. Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse has made fresh comments about the draft of William Hinman's June 2018 speech. Recall that since the SEC surrendered the drafts of Hinman's speech to Ripple in October, the document has remained sealed, with XRP community members eager to know the content of the emails. In a video shared by Crypto Law on Twitter, the outspoken Ripple CEO said that when Hinman's document is finally released, people will marvel at how the SEC could still charge Ripple despite discussions within the agency. And here's a quote from Garlinghouse. When the document comes to light, I think you would see more kind of like, how is it possible the SEC decided to bring a case against Ripple given what they were saying within their own walls, end quote. Yeah, and Brad Garlinghouse, he also went on to state that as a United States citizen, he said he was either embarrassed or ashamed. I believe it was one of those two anyway, just at because of how the SEC has been behaving as it pertains to its regulation by enforcement approach to crypto and all that. I could not be more curious to see what happens. So look, it's possible that, per the settlement terms of this case. And by the way, when I say settlement, I'm not talking about settlement pre-judgment. I'm talking about settlement post-Judge Annalisa Torres making a conclusion. It's still called settlement. It's just a settlement. It's not in terms of who is right and wrong at that point. It's a settlement in terms of the remedies, whether there's disgorgement or so on and so forth. I'm very curious to see what might result, in terms of, regardless of what the outcome is, in terms of what happens with the Bill Hinman Ethereum Free Pass emails. It does make you wonder. Because even if you get a disaster ruling against a Ripple, it just kind of makes you wonder, what's that going to look like? Because would Ripple, what Ripple might do, and this might be cited by John Deaton. Actually, maybe I should just go into the Deaton comments, but I think it was covered in here, but it had to do with the idea of, even if Ripple loses, what might they do? What might Ripple do in order to, salvage what they can? And the SEC might look at things like, maybe we'll give up some ground if Ripple agrees to waive its right to appeal, which could be good for XRP holders because what might they give up there? I think it was covered here. I could be mistaken, but so there is a clip that was shared here of CNBC. It's just one of the interviews that Brad Garlinghouse was a part of today. And Attorney Deaton shared that clip and wrote the following. I know when I predicted no settlement before a Judge Torres decision, some people disagreed. In Brad Garlinghouse's words, he can't imagine, quote, absent a significant change in the SEC's posture towards settlement, not receiving a ruling from Judge Torres, end quote. I'm surprised by how many people have tweeted out this video claiming Garlinghouse indicated the case will settle in the first half of the year. He literally says the opposite. He says, absent some major change at the SEC, he doesn't see how this case doesn't go to a decision. And then there was also this. An XRP community member named Tim wrote, all Ripple wants is one thing, XRP not a security going forward. Not sure why SEC and Gary Gensler won't give them that in exchange for a hefty fine. Makes no sense at all. And Attorney Deaton retweeted that and shared his thoughts on that topic. He said, Gary Gensler wants to crush crypto. He won't even approve a spot Bitcoin ETF. He believes XRP, ETH, and practically every other token is a security. He is playing the odds. If the SEC wins, Gensler and others will consider it a massive victory, providing the SEC with huge momentum. If the SEC loses the case, Gensler and the lawyers at the SEC will argue that the ruling has little bearing on other tokens because whether an asset was offered/sold as a security is a facts and circumstances test unique to each token/offer. Yeah, so again, another thing, as I was saying a minute ago, though, and I must have just seen it in a different tweet because it looks like I didn't have it included here, and it could have been from a different attorney, to be honest with you, but somebody was talking about this idea, one of the attorneys within the community, that you could have a situation where even if Ripple loses, if the SEC wants to make sure that they don't have to go through an appeal process, they could provide some sort of clarity specifically for XRP. And then in that case, even if Ripple loses, I consider this all win as an XRP holder. At that point, I mostly wouldn't give a damn. I'm still disgusted by the SEC and what they've done and how they've dragged Ripple through the mud. Like, that's stupid. But what matters to me most, I mean, can you blame me? I think we're probably mostly feel on the same page on this. It's that XRP holders on a massive scale have been harmed because of the way that the SEC has approached this case. So it just makes you wonder. And then there's stuff that you can imagine that the Hinman emails can be used as leverage depending on how things play out here. It's just interesting. And it makes us think about it. Ripple, even if Ripple wins, Ripple could choose to say, okay, we won't hand over the Hinman emails if the SEC, if you little SEC asshat pricks, if you're willing to waive your right to appeal, we will sign on the dotted line here. We will not hand over the Hinman emails. And I actually wouldn't have a huge problem with that, just to sew this up, because look, I think that this is going to be a recurring problem for the SEC. They're bringing so much litigation by enforcement, regulation by enforcement, rather. And there are going to be all sorts of other legal happenings where this is going to come up. And there may be cases where it's even more relevant, especially if there are lawsuits in the future having to do with the ERC20 tokens or Ethereum specifically. What's going to come up? Because I'm telling you, a judge has already said, no, this is not, what's the word that was used? The private communication, there's no privity here. So it wouldn't be weird to think that would come out again at some point in the future. So are they just going to try and sew it up every single, good luck. So I still think, even if we don't see it as a result of this case, the Hinman emails, I suspect at some unknown point in the future, they're going to come out. We're probably going to find out what's in them. Don't know for sure. And then there was also this from attorney Fred Rispoli, said this a few days ago. You can completely ignore the facts of this case. At this point, it would be illogical for SEC to settle before the summary judgment ruling. It loses nothing substantive by waiting because, number one, SEC has to test out its theory to conclusion against a major crypto at some point, and it's already gone this far. Number two, if FCC wins completely, which is unlikely, it can pressure Ripple to settle on favorable terms to avoid Ripple's appeal. Okay, so it was Fred Rispoli. If I went one tab further, I knew I read it. I couldn't remember if when I was mapping up my content for today, I couldn't remember for sure if I put it in this video. I thought I did, and I was right initially. So anyway, number two, if SEC wins completely, which is unlikely, it can pressure Ripple to settle on favorable terms to avoid Ripple's appeal. And three, if SEC loses completely, which is unlikely, it can still extort a solid money bag by agreeing to waive its own appeal rights. So there you go. I knew it was from an attorney. So there you go. At least you got to have that in full context from the attorney that got me thinking along those lines, because I found that concept to be really, really interesting, which is why I even retweeted it all up on the Twitters earlier. All right, you let me know what you think. That's what I got for you for this vid. I am done now. I am not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.